And we're back again. We have martial arts extraordinaire, Elliot Steel on the podcast. How you doing, my friend?
Why am I here? I have no insight. You've had like Tom Aspinall on this podcast and like jiu-jitsu and people like that who I like love, and then I'm here going, yeah, well, you could try get a takedown, I guess.
Just stand up.
Yeah.
Just stand up, the classic.
Man, my martial arts knowledge is not. I can like fool people who don't know anything, but coming on this, I'm quite nervous about because I know people have like listened to this for deep insight, and they're gonna immediately go, "What the hell is this guy talking about?"
You've got to go left field, man. You've got to throw out terminology they don't know.
Yeah.
The whole meta of jiu-jitsu, all these different names, the crab rise, the berimbolos, all sorts. Just throw something completely left field out. Like, oh, what's his guard? What's his position? Like, I don't know.
Oh man, I don't really have any guides anyway. I have normal, just base level standard guard, and then the minute someone's like, "Yeah, move to butterfly," I'm like, "Man, I'm not getting my leg there. My leg's not going there.
Not built to bend that way."
I'm gonna still. I play like to let people know like, I'm like very hobbyist. I'm like the Sam Allardyce of jiu-jitsu. I'm route one, long ball football. There is no inverting. There is no barimbolo. There is, I'm going to get to a mount, and I'm going to stall, and then hopefully the clock goes down, and I've won on points.
Well,
that's it.
There's a few things I want to go into on this. Is like, you've competed a fair bit in different disciplines, in Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, and all these different things. And when it comes to your competing, obviously balancing your career as well, how are you finding that split for time and prioritising, everything going on?
As I've got more successful at stand-up, it's a lot harder. You'd have to be very disciplined within the lifestyle of a stand-up is not conducive to martial arts at all, because you're working at night, so your sleep's already, your recovery is going to be off. If you've trained during the day, if I go in to the 12:30 class and I train, I go home, I shower, I eat, go out to gig somewhere up in the middle of the country, and then I'm getting back at 1 a.m. Your sleep pattern is already off. You're there, you might have a beer, you might have a cigarette. Immediately you're doing all the things that you know you shouldn't be doing. Or you forget to eat, so you're out, what's open? The only thing that's open is a KFC, I've got to go into there and do that. But I find when I'm at my happiest is when I'm getting those things right and I'm training and I'm doing stand-up. But I have to have a tournament coming up or something. I can't do that without the idea that somebody's... So when you know someone's out there training to beat you, you go, oh, I better... There's some guy currently deadlifting thinking about ripping my arm off. Probably shouldn't have a Twix for dinner. But without that, yeah, I fall apart. I'm a hobbyist. I enjoy what martial arts gives me. I've learned a lot through it. Learned that I'm not really a fighter, if I'm completely honest about it. I see a lot of people come into gyms who are hobbyists, and they convince themselves that they're fighters. And I'm like, man, you're gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
You might do well up until a point, and then you're gonna come up against someone who really is a fighter, really lives for this, trains every day, and it just has a mindset where hurting somebody, they don't think twice about it. I don't want to hurt people. And I actually carry that into tournaments, and it's a really silly attitude to have in a tournament, I think, because you're there to hurt each other. You have to, I've never been able to find that mindset of, I want to, rip this person's arm off and stuff. I always look over at the person, I'm like, this is just some dude.
Yeah.
And at one time I was walking on the mat, and this guy, I saw him like psyching himself up to come on against me. And I remember going like, that's the lamest thing ever. Dude, we've paid 75 quid to be here. Why are you doing this big like hacker movement to come on and be, it's a white belt tournament at Grappling Industries. We're not at the ADCC final here. Like, chill. He did beat me. maybe he had a point getting into that mindset. But he didn't win the tournament, so I can claim that.
Oh mate, it's the G and up that kills me. 'Cause I started doing a little bit of sort of slap, all this sort of stuff just to sit down and pull guard. After all that, it's like I'm hyped. I'm gonna go. Let's go and scoot, and I'm just trying to like get my hooks and all that kind of stuff, man. And it's like, what's going on?
That is the one flaw with jiu-jitsu, I think. Is it the higher up you go? Jiu-jitsu is an amazing form of self-defense. I think if anyone does jiu-jitsu if you get a 2-stripe white belt, and they get into a fight in an altercation on the street, if the other person doesn't know anything, that 2-stripe white belt is going to manhandle them, no problem. Even just like, you can pull someone down and guillotine them. There's a lot you can do. Once you start hitting the blues and the purple belts, and it's learning single leg X, De La Hiva, all of these absolutely useless self-defense positions, but incredibly important to the sport of jiu-jitsu, that's when the sort of memes about it take place. Like, oh, look, you know, who was it who fought? Was it Aljamain Sterling fought recently?
Yeah.
And he was complaining that the guy was fighting was butt screwing. He's like, that's not fighting. And you're like, yeah, it's a sport. There's the sport aspect to it. I love football, and the way sometimes you have to win when you play football is you have to be the worst team, so you have to play worse football. You have to play frustrating, boring, annoying football and frustrate the opposition. And that's a big tactic, I think, in jiu-jitsu, is to just sort of frustrate somebody to get them to make a mistake at that level. So I think when people like that complain about it, I get where he's coming from, but he's going, oh, it's not exciting to watch. And you go, yeah, that's the point of sport sometimes, is it's fun when it's fun, but sometimes it's boring. And that's why the fun things are really fun.
100%, you get the highs and the lows and all sorts. And I feel like the self-defense sport conversation is definitely really important, because I definitely train for sport. MMA is what I'd sort of liken to self-defense in a sense, because with the striking element, it just battle tests a lot more. Obviously there's concrete, yes, there's slams, multiple people, all different factors for self-defense. Best self-defense, cross-country running, 100 meter sprint. Get the fuck out of there.
We have to say that.
Yeah,
but really, it's an overhand.
That's a disclaimer.
I always love it when people in martial arts are like, you know, just get out of there, and then like you get a few beers in them, and they're like, and one time I'm elbowing this guy on the floor. You're like, what happened to that?
Where's like the respect?
Yeah, everyone in martial arts and MMA always says that, like, guys, if you want to learn how to win a fight, you run away, and then you have a chat with him, and they're like, yeah, and I picked him up and I spiked him on his head, and then I kicked him on the floor. You go, what? You go, oh, you have to kind of do that for show.
Yeah,
that's always. But yeah, I had a couple occasions, a few times, and jiu-jitsu was very good for it. Like, it was very, very simple. Like, hey, dude, like, it didn't even get too physical. It was like, hey, look, you can. It's amazing you forget. 'Cause I'm bad at jiu-jitsu, right? But I'm better than the average person. So you just even understand balance and weight. That's a huge advantage against whoever you're facing. Now, the higher up you go, I always think, if you put 100 hours into something, you're better than 95% of the population at it. You are impressive to a large percentile of the population. But then to get impressive to the next 5%, you've got to put an astronomical amount of hours in. And that's jiu-jitsu. You know, there's black belts in my gym I can roll with, and I rolled against Owen Flanagan one time. He was coaching at the gym I train at, New Wave, and I really wish I was good at jiu-jitsu to understand how good he is at jiu-jitsu, because it's almost like he was wasted rolling with someone like myself, because he doesn't have to do anything to be, not at all. He can like whatever he wants to do, he can do. So for someone like myself to roll with someone like that, like, you always go, oh, I wonder how I'd fare up against like one of the best in the world. You go, well, you don't even understand how good they are when you're at my level. You know, like today I trained with you, and within like 30 seconds, I'm being dash choked. I'm like doing everything wrong. You go, yeah, that's what, you know, that's what jiu-jitsu is. I think you've just got to, when you're a hobbyist, just be a fucking hobbyist, man. Like, just suck at it to your level that you suck at.
I mean, I agree and disagree in certain points. I feel like if you want to just add up your XP, just start building up, having some more fun and just building up your level, you can become a harder round. You go from being a rest round to being a drilling round to being an actual competitive round. It just takes that time and progression. And the more you start to learn, it's like a language almost. Like the leg locks are a prime example. Like Owen Flanagan, I remember watching like his matches, instructionals, all sorts, and talking about single leg X, reverse De La Hiva, all this sort of different stuff. And I'm like, it's a different sport, man. What's going on? What am I learning? And then over time, it's just, okay, I'm starting to see the shapes, see the sort of scenarios here. I'm seeing this happen in this match and this other sort of stuff. And it starts to make some sort of sense. Now, that is a huge disclaimer. If we were to roll, I ain't got a chance.
Yeah.
But I understand the gist of what's happening to me.
Yeah, for sure. And when I first started, he was teaching at my gym, and it would be those kind of moves, like how we're gonna wrestle into here. There's like 7 things have to happen before we get this takedown, and I'm gonna detail. He's a very good coach. I'm gonna detail every part of it on the way. Then when we're in this position, we're going to do this to go to here. And I was there like, how'd you do an armbar? Like, how'd you Kimura? And then he'll show me how you do like an ADCC level armbar. And it's like nothing like it was like, right, you're going to get a mount, you're going to go to this bit of S mount. And there's like 4 things you've got to do on the way to S mount. And then we're going to secure here and there. And I'm like, no, but I watched an Instagram reel and this guy just did this. Because I'm probably not the best student to teach as well. I'm not gonna, if I'm completely honest, I'm gonna go out and have a couple beers. I'm gonna go out, but when I like competing because I like putting myself in the mindset of like, oh my god, you've got to go train. And when training's fun, when training's fun, it's easy to go in. When it's sunny and it's nice, you go in there, you know everyone at your gym. You're gonna have a chat. You're gonna have a good time. You're gonna get a few rounds in. The sport's fun. You're in good shape, so training doesn't take as much out of you as usually. But when training's hard, that's when I find it like you have to go in. When it's raining, you're tired. I've been writing all day. It's sometimes not even writing. Sometimes I've had to just sit at my laptop, send emails all day, or edit a thing. Time's caught up on me, and now I've got to go to jiu-jitsu. And you walk in and then you look and it's like all the higher belts. So you go, oh man, I'm not even gonna have fun here. I'm gonna get smashed. But then you leave and you go, that's where I became better. That's made me better, and that added something to my life that I think is really important. But sometimes I book in for a session, and then I deliberately text the comedy club to see if I could go drop in there so I can get out of training. So then I can go like, hey, that's my job.
It's out of control.
Yeah, I've got to put that first. So that's sometimes how like I gig like, so I'll have done like 7 or 8 shows this week by the time of weekends. And that's how I put the same thing, for how most fighters treat fighting, I try to treat stand-up. I think the philosophy of MMA and jiu-jitsu applied to something else is very, very similar. And it's good for people who, like me, have to learn a very basic way of living your life. And that, Miyato Musashi, like, when you see the way in one things, you see the way in all things. I heard Joe Rogan say that. I've never read his book. So.
Yeah, I get just of it.
Yeah. So yeah,
I've seen the TikToks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's always like a tiger or something. That's my favorite thing is when there's some like accountant from your gym or something, and they start putting up like some like samurai picture and you're like, what are you talking about, man? You're an estate agent.
Literally, bro. You got to get out your ice bath and just get on with your day.
Yeah, and that's when I see people. That's when I see people. I go like, oh, you're not a fighter. You're like adopting a personality, which is fine. That's I used to play cricket. There's people who come down and like would behave like cricketers. I think people just want to be part of something. And my gym's really communal, new wave. The guys who run it are really sound. Everyone there, never had an issue with anyone there. Trained there for about 3-4 years. They're really cool. The first proper gym I trained at, which I'll remain nameless, was like a cult. You didn't speak to the owners unless spoken to. You came in, you had to bow. No, they had to do that because it was in Thornton Heath and they were getting kids in off the streets who were like, in gangs and stuff. So there did have to be that aspect of it. But it all kind of eventually went a bit tits up here and there because it wasn't, we were talking about this earlier, you've got to keep the lights on, you've got to keep the hobbyist, the white belt, the person who's just coming in to kick the heads, maybe lose a bit of weight, you've got to keep them happy. It's a business model as well as trying to train people to become world champion. But like, I don't know, how do you find that? Like, you work in gyms and stuff, and like you have more insight into it than me.
This is a can of worms. Let's open it. One thing I did like, as soon as you said the gym would remain nameless, you were a bit quiet. Like, just in case they hear.
Bro, do you know what?
Just in case they hear.
Yeah, it was an incredibly good gym. Everyone who was there was lovely. The sound people, some of the best people I've ever met in my life. But I went away and did the Edinburgh Fringe, came back, and a lot of people had left.
Really?
And I was like, and then I remember sort of going to someone like, what happened? And they were like, hey man, if you don't know, it's probably best you don't ask. And I was like, I was like, all right, whatever. And now I see that, because that was like my first proper gym, I would now see that as a red flag in a gym. I don't like when we came to train at Kraken today, it's just guys sitting around, hey man, do you want a coffee? Do you want to hang out? Like, everyone very easy to speak to. You go, oh, everyone here's chill. And not that this place wasn't, there was just, it was like a cult. Like everyone coming in, and then it got a little bit like, hey, you got to turn up in this particular uniform.
Yeah, I love those gyms.
Yeah, man.
We love a cult.
Yeah, so I've got to turn up. Oh, I've got to pay membership here, and then buy your overpriced shorts, which did look cool.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I don't know, but it was an exceptional gym. Like for training, if you wanted to get good, it was a really good place to do that. But yeah, I still have a little bit of the fear in me, like they're going to give me some burpees because I've badmouthed them on a podcast.
Yeah,
I'm not bad-mouthing, I'm just telling them from what my experience is. Please don't come kick my head in.
Disclaimers.
Yeah.
It's all legible. It's not real. It never happened. This is all bullshit. So with the gym politics stuff, as I saw a meme, obviously where I get all my information from is Instagram memes, is to get a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you need a degree in political science. Because of all that's been going on constantly. You can't train there with them. What about this? You can't learn that. They're starting their own gym. Oh, can't talk to them anymore. It's all this kind of stuff. And to steal from Craig Jones for just grown men rolling around on the floor. Why is it so serious?
Yeah, I think it covers people's lives. And it actually comes, I always have this with the Gracies when they were like, every cop should have a purple belt. That's insane. What are you talking about? No one would be able to become a police officer because they've got to do 5 years. Yeah, let's not learn how to de-escalate a situation. Let's learn
How to break
Let's learn how to break someone's arm to a really high level, or let's learn how to do a barimbolo. That's going to help you it's this thing I think sometimes in martial arts where people apply they think there's a certain philosophy to it that I think's a little bit not true. That like everyone comes in and gets humbled. That's not true. I've met some people who are really good at kicking people's heads in and enjoy it, and they will do that at the drop of a hat. They're ready to go, and we like to sort of go, oh, you come in and you get humbled and you learn humility. Some people get CTE, and then, but they're not a pro fighter. They're just like Darren. And then now you've got this guy who knows how to throw like a really good calf kick, who's got a bit of brain damage. And he's just let out into the world. Oh yeah, let's make that guy a police officer. That's it. So I think sometimes, what you're saying, like, yeah, it comes people's world and you have to strip it back a little bit. And that's why, like, in comedy, there's people I meet and their lives are just comedy. I'm like, man, you need something else. Go play five-a-side, go get into golf, get into something. I think with men, when you get past a certain age, you need a hobby that's going to take up 30% of your life, but it can only take up 30%. Any more than that, it's a problem. You're going to start, and for that, a lot of people, it's golf. A lot of my friends are going into golf, but I think it's lame. So I'm not going to get into it. It's like, they're like, oh yeah, but you can walk around. I'm like, yeah, but like, I'd rather learn jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I'd rather learn something that's cool. And that's an important thing as a guy to have that, and whether it be martial arts or whatever. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I've probably got CTE as well. Like, I'll get punched in the head quite. I've been kicked in the head like way too many times for someone who does stand-up comedy as a job. And then in my gym, they told me that I've got to stop sort of training. And one of them was like, oh, because like your spelling in the WhatsApp group. And I was like, man, it's always been like that. That's not brain damage. That's me being thick.
That's dyslexia, bro. Cool.
But yeah, sorry, what was my point? The idea, what you're saying, like with the gym politics and all of that stuff. I, as someone who is just in the gym, I have no place to get involved in it. I remain out of it all the time. And I think to some people, it comes their world, and they then can't believe that their world is not going exactly the way they want it to go. And you need a lot of things to run a gym. You need business management. You need people skills. I saw a thing where someone was saying one time, like, coaches, they're like, you're not just a coach, you're like a therapist. You're a therapist. People are going to come tell you their problems, and people are going to have like real life issues, and they're going to see you as a person to speak to about it, which is that's where martial arts is cool. You have this cool little community of people quite open with each other. And I always talked about this earlier. I always like that. I don't know what someone's politics is, what their religion is, what their philosophy is. You train with each other, you have a chat, and if you're at a gym a while, a few weeks later, you kind of find out like, oh, that guy's conservative. Oh, I'm not a conservative, but I get on with it. That's where I think it really is amazing at bringing people together and teaches you a particular worldview. And that's when that's firing on all cylinders at a gym, that's an amazing thing.
This is it. It really humanises people and really grounds everyone to sort of, a bit of a pun now, I'll take that. It's one of them where you just kind of, it's just business. Nothing else. No, what you look like, what you do, anything like that. You just roll, train, ask questions, learn everything else. Shake hands, say goodbye, go home, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I feel like the politics, it comes from two places. And if it comes from the students, that's the red flag. Coaches, I get it. I'm not just investing time in you, all this rest of it. You're keeping my lights on. And now you're training with so-and-so down the road, okay. But then I've invested all this time in you. You're going to compete. Whose flag are you going to fly? Because it's all well and good training at this gym and that gym. But when it comes to representing what's going to happen, if you had to give up one, who would it be? You know, you can only go between the two. Which ones, where are you? And I struggle with that. Because of like home situation, I'm training in different places. And it's tricky. It's tricky to try to establish where home is. And, you know, I have friendship groups, I have people I'm invested in, but also I've got people I'm invested in another area. So it's a tricky one to really establish. And what you have to really understand with this situation is we're all people. We've all got a mutual interest and a mutual passion. And it's just navigating that very carefully. It's a really delicate balance. But when it comes to being a practitioner and the mindset, and I feel like what we've touched on there, it's not a bad thing to adopt this fighter lifestyle mindset persona, because I feel like it's not a bad one to have. It basically means you're relatively healthy, you're disciplined, respectful, you're
that's true.
all these good things. And yeah, it's a bit cringe. Yeah, you put the old Joker memes on Facebook. Stuff. But, you know, we move. You know, if that's the worst thing you do, I feel like...
Oh, for sure. But my default position is to take the piss out of things. But I guess I do that from a place of, you know, like... probably an insecurity of not being good at fighting. Like, that's probably an insecurity of mine, or like going into my gym and kind of realizing when I did that MMA in the club and I got hit, and I've been hit before and been like, well, okay, let's go. And I got hit and I did get eye poked and I couldn't continue. But when I got hit, I wasn't, oh, let's go. I was like,
yeah.
like, oh man, that sucks.
That wasn't very nice.
Yeah, and then I was chatting to a friend of mine who's, you know, fought out in Thailand and stuff, and he went, dude, get out of that, like, feeling bad about that. He went, I wish most fighters realise that. He went, because so many of them stay in too long, and that's their positioning, and that's when people start getting really hurt. He goes, there's so many people, like, I guess in a way, like, you look at someone like Tony Ferguson, like, someone needs to go close to him, like, dude, this isn't going how you think it should go. Have you thought, I know this is your life. And he's had an amazing career. He's had a career people would dream of. There's people doing that on a level at just, you know, amateur boxing. They're still going in there, they're like 38 and they're getting like knocked about the ring. And they haven't got anyone around them going, man, Paul, you're not even getting paid. You know, this isn't you've got to come in from that. And you actually see that a lot in comedy as well, not to the same degree, but it's very similar. People sort of, they're doing a load of old jokes about things that aren't quite relevant anymore, a bit older, they're out of touch, they don't know what's going on, and they go on stage and it's just kind of sad. It gets like really like, you start looking at your feet and stuff, and like there's a lot of similarities I find between the world of martial arts and the world of stand-up. Very, very similar, which I know sounds weird, but I think any job where you're self-employed and it's a job of passion, you're there because you want to be there. You're there because you love, deep down, you love it, you love watching it. I love watching comedy, I love watching fights. Sometimes the two have been in between, just a tonic Birmingham. It you know, it adds this different element to it, and that I've learned a lot from jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, and even my old gym that I used to train at taught me discipline. That was the amazing. It taught me how you can get good at something if you really apply yourself, if you really try at something. And I remember there was a day in there we got given 500 burpees after sparring. I was like, there's no way I can do 500 burpees. Now, I didn't do 500 burpees because the gym was closing, but I got to 425, which is pretty close. So like, they were like, you've got to go home because like we've got lives. And I was there like, it was taking me like 2 minutes to just do one now. But I know, I was like, oh, I could do that. But there was just something in my brain that was always like, nah, you can't do that. And you've learned something about yourself today, which is something that I always am really grateful to martial arts for. That's the thing that I do it for, I guess, is to sort of prove to myself like, oh, if you really stick at something, if you really try at something, you can learn. And sometimes you can tap into that zone where you have to be a bit aggressive and find something within you and get something, and you know, you've got to win the round here, and okay, I know, don't tap to this, and we can move and take yourself a bit deeper, and that's really cool. And sometimes that can land you in trouble. Sometimes, you know, you didn't tap to something and now your arm's a bit injured, and you go, oh, maybe I should be a bit softer in times and not try to be that. So you can adopt that fighter personality, but I think it's an identity that sometimes people wear that isn't necessarily them, that can land them in trouble a little bit.
And where it's really tricky, I feel, is this whole, how do I explain it? So if I told you you're not good enough to be a stand-up, you'd be, no, I'm not. Or you'd either be two things, either deflated, but I'll prove you wrong.
Yeah, I'd have to prove you wrong.
And it's that I'm proving them wrong.
Yeah.
Fuck the haters, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, nah, it's not that conversation, bud.
Yeah, sometimes this is the thing, like when people go like, failure is like the most important thing. So in stand up, when I'm trying to write a new routine, so it's quite high risk. It's right. This is where it's similar to jiu-jitsu. Say you're trying to learn, like an Imanami roll, right? And it's super complex, but you're like, I'm gonna pull off that in my next tournament. I'm gonna spend all my time learning that, and I'm gonna get it really, really wrong until I'm able to get it right, and then I'm able to get it right. Routines are very similar to that. So sometimes you'll take like a subject matter or something that's difficult, and you go, I know I can make this funny. I know I can make this horrible area of whatever and turn that funny. And I'm gonna have to go on, I'm gonna have to die in front of a load of people. It's all masochistic. It's all, I'm gonna have to get hurt, or I'm gonna have to have public humiliation. It's very, very similar. But sometimes you have to go, well, I don't think I can do that. And there's all these self-help things now where people go, you know, failure's important. Yeah, failure's important to learn how to get it right. But sometimes failing is a sign not to continue. Like sometimes failing is important to go, well, I'm probably not going to do that again. Like, and I think, you know, I do think when it comes to, not that my gym has this, but like there is a responsibility sometimes I see where I watch people walk into fights and I go, oh, dude, like, no, that guy across from me was, you know, you have things, you look at like a lot of where fighters come out of now, and throughout history, like you look at boxing, like the first people who were like the toughest boxers in America were Jewish people because they were Jews arriving over from Europe. Then it came Italians, and it came like black people, and then it came like Cubans, and it all came from like this group arrived, got picked on, had to toughen up, become hard, and that they produced these fighters. That's what happened. To realize there is a different mindset every now and then from, if you're going in there because you're fighting your demons, like from whatever background, I think you will be a good fighter. I don't necessarily think someone like myself is going in to fight my demons, but I've got enough of a God complex to apply that to everyone else, which is again my problem.
See, there's a mix of things you've covered there. It's hard to choose which one to go into.
Sorry, I rambled.
No, it's perfect. That's just more which area to sort of follow into. But I feel the approach to what you're doing is really important. Like this Ryan Holiday Stoic thing of obstacle is the way, it becomes the way kind of thing. Like it doesn't become the end result. It's like okay, we have to review, analyze, and see what we're going to do to make adjustments. And I'll give you an example. My competitions in jiu-jitsu, social media, you see me think, oh, he's the man. Reality, I'm the one who's getting smashed bottom of the pile for a lot of my top high-level comps. I get the odd wins here and there, but what's happened recently is the change of approach. It's not I show up, it's either gold or I'm upset. There's no in between. What it is now is I'm developing systems, I'm trying things, and I'm trying this at competition level. Is it working? What adjustments am I making? Things like that. And then your failure becomes trial and error, not black and white, I've lost, bad, all these negative things, all the CBT stuff of the associations and all sorts of different things. And I feel like understanding your trajectory is much more important than understanding where you're at the minute. Is, are you going the right direction? Are you going to make improvements? Are you going to make progression? Are you going to be able to develop? Or are you going to just repeat and do the same thing of doing the same thing, same results, expecting a change? You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. But and that's what I was touching on with stand up. Is I have that with stand up. Is sometimes I go to a gig and I don't do very well, and I have to go through the not doing very well. But the not doing very well is the step forward, because I got one bit that wasn't quite working, two working. So I've like bits that I'm working on at the minute that if I'm lazy, I could leave them and they're fine. But to make them really good, I've got to figure out better punchlines, maybe softer. Sometimes it's you might again, where it's similar to jiu-jitsu, you can teach me an armbar, but that's not how you do an armbar. But that might be, you know, that's not the only way of doing the armbar, sorry. So you can sometimes come at a topic from an angle, and that's how you've been doing that. And then one day you're like, what if I changed the way that I did that? Oh, that's working a lot better now. But that might happen after years. Which, again, very similar to jiu-jitsu. One day you just see something else and you go, oh, it's way easier if I just, if I'd known that all along, that would have been a lot better. But that, again, comes through trial and error. What you're saying in the way you've got to approach shows and you've got to approach gigs is kind of similar to like how you approach tournaments, going, right, I could just go on and do my old material and it goes well. But if I keep doing that, I'm not, as a comedian, going to get better. I'm going to stagnate, and eventually I will be like that old guy I was talking about doing that, and that's where I don't want to end up. And that's where, again, like, it comes back to martial arts and the constant the constantly trying to be better than you were yesterday. And sometimes to be better than you were yesterday, you've got to go backwards. You've got to really go backwards and get smashed. You know, like if you go, you know, it's like if you're good from playing from the top, eventually you've got to start playing from the bottom. And that might be a humbling, that guy that you were tapping out all the time, suddenly he's passing your guard and he's mounting you, and you've got to that's when you've got to let go of the ego and go, I've just got to accept this is what it is, this is part, and one day I'm going to stop and maybe get into mount and recover a bit of guard. And it's kind of like that with jokes in a way. Like, you got to watch an act who you're better than, go on and do better than you, because you're stepping backwards, but that's all through the trial and error of what you were talking about.
Yeah, it's a real mix, to be honest. And when it comes to delayed gratification, I feel is the real key point of this, that if you're prepared for the long-term reward, for the short-term frustrations, mistakes, all the rest of it, is a really important concept there. But also something you touched on there about understanding how to sort of transfix things, mix them all around, see how you make things work for yourself. I think it's Pablo Picasso said about learn the rules as a beginner so you can break them like an artist.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can understand how the mechanics work of things, so you can apply them in different ways. And with jiu-jitsu is a big way of how I've started developing my style, because obviously you learn from your coaches, but they've got their body types, their styles, and other instructors. You spar, you get feedback, you try different things. You say, oh, this is the way I do this, not the way to do it.
Yeah.
And that important sort of real discrepancy there is, it's your perception of it. We could see the same painting and see different things. There might be a different perspective on it, might be a different representation to how you've seen it from your past experiences. You might have seen something similar before, might remind you of that. All these different interpretations. It's the same thing. And this is where comedy and stand-up is a really interesting concept, and how you end up telling a joke, writing a joke, thinking of a joke, and it being perceived, and how it's being understood and where it sort of comes from, and also like the art of the delivery and all these different essences. Can't think of the words I can do with stand-up.
Oh, dude, that happens to me on stage. There's so many times I watch a recording back and I'm like, yeah, that's not how you say that.
It's different language.
Yeah, that's not you. No, so yeah, as we say,
No, it's just that same sort of point. It's just more perception. It's a really interesting concept, which is where this is where I'd be a terrible stand-up. I'd write a joke. I'd think it'd be funny. So I would think, I'd say it this night. Nah, they didn't get it. I'll tell someone else that joke. Nah, they didn't get it. Oh, no, it's them. It's their problem, not me.
I do that. Yeah. Look, I'm sitting here acting like I'm really stoic and do this shit. I came off last night. I was like, idiots. Like, don't get me, do you? Don't realise how great I am. I'm clearly too high level concept for you. And that does happen. And sometimes you have to know the difference between the crowd. Yeah, there are times where you go, all right, they're not my crowd. And then there's a reason you can learn how. I think you have a choice. You can learn how to play to it. There's a comedian I knew who said something very profound to me one time, and it wasn't meant to be profound. It was talking about he was in this big play at this theatre. There was this particular comedy club, and at Christmas, it's when we do most of our gigs, right? But Christmas gigs are hell on earth. You're playing to office parties. It's people who don't go out. They're now out. They're drinking. You're doing stand up. They don't want to really be there. You don't want to be there, and it can be chaos. Some of them can be great, but the clubs that were asking him to gig were chaos. And he went, hey, look, I'm in this play at the theatre. They said, would you come do the gigs? He went, hey, I'm doing this play in the theatre. I can do the gigs because I can get the tube down to it, but I have to close. And they were like, nah, you got to open. And he was like, well, I can't do that. And they were like, oh, well, just pull this play you're in. And he was like, no, I really want to be in this play. So he just went, all right, well, don't book me anymore. Fine. Take my gigs out of the diary. And he went, I then got better as a stand-up because I stopped playing to those kind of crowds, and I dropped to like certain kind of like going out there to perform to drunk audiences. Drunk, rowdy audiences can be great, but it's not where you want to be all your life as a comedian, or myself anyway. You don't want to always be out there doing crowd control and, you know, hecklers here, there, and everywhere, and people just talking. And then he said, I got a lot better as a stand-up and started getting better things, you know. And I'm sure there's an analogy like that. In fact, like sometimes, you know, there might need to be a change in gym or environment because the place you know you might be in, it might be that their philosophy towards fighting isn't conducive with how you train. And something I want to touch on that you said that I thought was interesting is about, you know, how do I do this? This isn't the way. How do I do this? I always watch sort of and like think this with jiu-jitsu coaches. I always really respect the jiu-jitsu coach, or go, they're a good jiu-jitsu coach, when they go, hey guys, this is a way of doing this. Instead of, no, this is how you do this. They're always like, hey, this is how I do this. There are other ways. There's other ways to defend this. But this is the one that I like and that I'm going to show you guys today. That's not necessarily the way. And I always go, oh, that's really good coaching. That's a really good way of, you know, going to a class of people like, this is what works for me, but might not work for you. And that's where jiu-jitsu comes. It does come like an interpretation. It is an art form because there are many different ways of doing things.
No, definitely. When it comes to what you're saying there about your environment, because there's two approaches to this. There's the Aristotle thing of wherever you go, you will be. So it's about you and your perception, your relationship with yourself, and how you're managing your expectations, all these different things. Because say you go to a new gym, you could think in your head it's like this ADCC finals level of like hard rounds. It's crazy. Everyone's high level, always different thing. But you get there and there maybe a few local tournaments, maybe whatever else. But everyone's really welcoming. They really help you out. You know, the schedule suits your work schedule, all this kind of stuff. And you think, you know what? I'm really happy here.
Yeah.
Or it could be, I want to be a competitor, and that same environment isn't quite what I'm looking for. The rounds aren't that intense. Loads of people sit out. It's just whatever. But neither's right or wrong. And one thing to really hone in on this point is you can apply these situations. You can add these things and change things and tweak things from yourself. So I'll give you an example. Say you're at a gym where you're the highest grade and you're rolling with people white and blue belts, you're a purple belt, for example. You can try different things. You can learn different things. You haven't got to just be the hammer all the time. You could be the nail and learn a new position, try it out, trial and error. You can upskill people by teaching them different things, show them defenses to what you do well. You can really build your environment. Or alternatively, if you're the opposite way around, you can ask the questions. You can try and find out the answers. You can be very proactive. So instead of just accepting where you're at reluctantly, very downtrodden, like, oh, I guess this is my lot,
Yeah.
you can really make the most out of what you've got. And I feel people don't appreciate that with whatever they're doing. They could think, I'm stuck with what I've got in this really negative perspective. When whether it's preparation, you can ask people questions on different feedback. What do you think to this joke? What do you think to this setup? What do you think to all this delivery? All these different things. And that feedback you can actually get and actually work with people. You can really build on what you've got and develop what you've got. It's the grass is greener thing. It's greenest where you water it, you know?
Yeah, that's absolutely, and what you touched on there is there's a thing. I have a joke that does well at the minute, and a comedian, good friend of mine, Jamali Maddox, was like, he went, "That's a really good premise." He went, "And the punchline gets a laugh, but you can write something better." And I was like, "Yeah, I can. I'm being lazy." He went, "That premise is too good for that punchline." He went, "You're cheapening the premise." I was like, yeah, you're right. I still haven't changed it, but
Yeah, it's nice.
But like, yeah, but he's correct. Like, and you know, sometimes you've got to be in an environment where in stand up, you need to be around. I think really good stand ups, people who push each other, people who try things that you go, all right, that's interesting, that's cool, and the same within a gym, you know, and even then I notice there's like comedians I know who are coming up. And you see them and you go like, oh, you've got something. You don't quite know what it is yet, but when you figure that out, that's going to be amazing. And that's kind of like when you watch someone come up through a gym and go, well, this guy's got, or this girl, they've got something that, like that took me years to learn that, and they've got that instinctively, and there's still like little things that they've got to do. Well, with stand-up, you test it against the audience, realistically. It's always against, you know, and again, like what I learned from my first gym was writing is doing pad work, realistically. It's learning the bits, tweaking certain things, seeing what's happening, and then doing Dutch drills is kind of a new material night. You're going out there, you're seeing how it goes, how it will work, because, you know, it's easy to look good on pads. You know, someone's putting the pad forward and all that. And sometimes you go test it and you go, oh, I don't know how to measure distance. Oh, I don't know the timing of that. I don't know the beat of this. And it's very, again, stand up. And then you've got sparring, which is like, you put it on like a club night. Like if I put it on when I'm doing like a slightly bigger gig on the weekend, and if I can get it working with people who've come out, not specifically to see me, but to enjoy their night and drink and get that working there, that means I can get it working in the fight, which is like the Edinburgh Fringe or my own show. And that's just kind of a way that like fighting taught me something really important about how to do my job. And I think that's where a lot of people can learn from fighting, can learn something where they go, oh, if I just break it down like this, because if you have a good coach who just breaks things down for you, like my MMA coach, Tommy, he breaks things down very, very well. Like if he can have someone as uncoordinated and as dopey as me come in and get me to land a couple of strikes, he can do it. You know what I mean? When I'm coming in like slightly hungover,
Half cut.
yeah, I've never turned up like wasted or anything like that. I'm not that disrespectful, but when I just sort of walk
Although
in,
you'll admit anyway.
yeah, when I walked in and like my nutrition has been free donuts on the way to the gym, if he can get it to work with someone like myself, you know, he could do wonders with anyone. So, but yeah, that's mainly what I've learned from martial arts.
Tommy for president.
I wouldn't say president.
No, we were saying a little while back. I was like the thing in the gym apparently.
I think Tony, I don't know if I'd want him like in charge of the work, but he's got a beautifully stoic mind, which I really appreciate as well. Around in the gym, like he's just sort of, you know, it is what it is, it'll be what it'll be. And I think that's another good thing is when your coach has a very calm presence toward things. There's another person who I really like, Mark Goodrich, who I've trained under a lot. And he just has a way of looking at life and a way of dealing with things, you know, very kind-hearted, clean-hearted person. And you just go like, oh, okay, I'm in safe hands here. This person wants what's best for me. This person wants me to do well. That's a really cool place to be, I think. And that's, you know, you do sort of come like, it's weird how you come friends with these people. It's a very weird way to come friends. Like this person's going to teach you how to kick someone in the leg.
Really, really hard.
Really, really hard. And then you're going to hang out. Because
Go for beers after.
Yeah. And you sort of look up to them because they've shown you how to take someone down and then throw an elbow into their face.
It's so funny, man. It's like you go out, say you train hard like a lunchtime session, afterwards you go out for food with them. It's like, I'm with people. We've just been on the floor. We've just been doing all this. This person's this belt. This person's that belt. They're this national champion. Can I have no onion, please?
Yeah. I always like when everyone starts talking about food and like someone's like, no, you can't have Costa, like the evilness. And you're like, we've just been punching each other in the face. That's not healthy either. But that's where I think, that's where I love it. I love the camaraderie of it. I like going to the gym. I like speaking to all the people there. And like, I really like the reasons why people do it. Sort of similar to you, like why you set up this podcast is to go like, why do people do this? And like I said, when I see people adopt, they get into it a little bit like you do with anything, and it's the same. I think the same when I go to watch the football, when I watch someone and they've turned up in a load of Stone Island and all they want to do is take their week out on a linesman who's got the decision correct most of the time and they just want to yell at them and they're in an environment. I'm like, sometimes I think, is that who you really are? Or are you putting on something because you just want to belong to something, And so, but then I'm like exactly what you think of a comedian. Like, I will smoke, I will drink, I say stupid things. And that's like a place that I fit into. So I guess if I have that I should extend the courtesy for these people to have their thing. But my thing doesn't leave people like in an oxygen mask that I've had to pay money to come watch my mate get knocked out. Like, if I just die on stage, you could just, it's just socially awkward. I don't have to be like, oh, Jesus Christ.
It's funny you say that though. The amount of fighters who would prefer to get knocked out,
it's insane,
then die on stage.
It's insane. I had Tom Aspinall go to me, genuinely go, can do what you do, mate. Like weeks after he's just been hit by Sergey Pavlovich, I was like, yeah, dude, I couldn't get hit by Sergey Pavlovich. If I walked in and I saw Sergey Pavlovich there, I'd spit my gum shield out. I'd just cry. I'd cry and beg. That it is weird. I think it's because they say like the number one biggest fear is public speaking. I don't believe that, but I know it's a pretty big fear. But that said, there's a lot of tricks and stuff in stand-up. I could teach people how to do stand-up. It's very similar to jiu-jitsu. So probably like the first 50 times you do jiu-jitsu, you're not really doing jiu-jitsu. You're just learning how to lose. You're just learning what's going to happen. It's kind of what stand-up is. The first 50 gigs you do is just, the thing that will throw most people isn't like the audience and that. It's mic technique. There's lights on. It's a bit brighter than I thought it would be. And does my voice sound like that into a microphone? And I've got to remember the things. That's what throws people. So if you can get those very basic things down, you can then start looking at the other things, which is like joke structure. You can teach people like callbacks. And like I said, if you do like 100 gigs, you can start to look all right at it. But you could teach anyone to do stand-up. There's a lot of, if you just get over when you learn to enjoy, I guess it's kind of like, I quite enjoy dying sometimes. Because you can start like really going for it. Yeah. You can start, when the crowd really doesn't like you, that's a fun place to be. I enjoy that.
Really?
Yeah, I love that. I really, there's some times where it's bleak. I did a Christmas party in Manchester and it was just me. And to this day, I think it's not the worst gig I've ever had, but it's the most humiliating gig I've had.
Really? What's the difference?
Just I don't find having a bad gig in a crowd. I had a whole crowd try to fight me one time. But that's a cool story.
Yeah.
That's a fun story. I had people like, they didn't know I was going to be on. I was stood by like a DJ tech box. There's no lights or anything. And there was people just getting like spring rolls while I was on stage trying to do the thing that I love. And it was just humiliating. And I'd gone to Manchester for it. I remember just being on the train back home. It was a 3.5 hour train back home, back to London. And I just went to myself, the train got delayed. And I was like, hey, at least I'm not on stage.
That's
I was like, at least I'm not doing that again. Every time there was a delay, I was like, I will sit here all night. I just kept going. Like, I had to ring a mate and go like, dude, I just need to talk to someone. Because that was bad. There's 30 people at a company in Manchester who now think I'm the worst comedian in the world. Anytime they see me on anything, any level of success I get, I could have a Netflix special and a stadium tour. They're going to go, do you remember when he came to our office party and sucked? That's all I'm going to ever be to these people. And that's where I go like, yeah, that's the fear. That when that happens, you go, that's why people don't want to do stand-up comedy. Because when that happens, and I was there on my own. I wasn't with other comedians. Like, imagine you went to a fight just on your own. You got chinned. And then there's no one around you after. There's no one to talk to. There's no one to grab on to. There's no like, none of the love or anything that you need or any of the camaraderie. It's just you. And then you've got to walk out past the fans of the person who've just not, and they're going to be celebrating and jubilant. That's
close to home. That's fine.
And then get a 3.5 hour train from Manchester and just sit there and go, what am I doing with my life?
Mine was Birmingham.
Really?
That was it. Second MMA fight. So this is the terrible story. And I don't want to tell it, but I'm going to tell it for the content.
Yeah.
So I made the cliche worst mistake in MMA, which is my coach said I wasn't ready for the fight. So what did I do? I'm going to still train. I'm going to put myself forward for it, go independent for it.
No.
If anyone's independent to fight, that's basically a free win and tapology. That's the dream. I'll get prepared. I think I'm doing all right, sparring a fair bit. Everything's just ticking on. Nothing's out of the ordinary. I already had a fight before that. Did all right, not great. But anyway, we get to fight night. I'm there, main event. I'm gassed. I'm excited. I'm on weight. This guy, quite a big guy, pretty strong. Weight division above what I fought last time. Okay, cool. Throw a few shots, go for a takedown, doesn't really work out. He clips me with an overhand right. I drop back, hit the mat, conk back up, turtle up. I'm tapping because mat hurts so much. I was like, nah, I'm done, I'm out. And then I realised what happened. I lost. I was like, nah, I'm upset now. I'm like, fuck's sake, all this. I'm prepped, everything. I got upset, man. I was like, nah, I can't do this. And then I'm just devastated, man. And I was just like, what? Hey, dickhead. But I'll tell you what, after that, spoke to the coaches, got an next fight booked. That was in the November, fought in the March. Then I won that fight. And after that, I got respect from quite a few people of like, after that humiliation.
You got back in there.
I got back in there, got a win, and we're like, okay, cool. And I cut to 66 for that.
Yeah.
In that fight, man, I'm not 66. I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
A long drink of water, man.
What was it that made you do that? That one that was like, I'll show the people I'm wrong. Was it a bit like I can?
It was a mix of things, to be honest. It's like, one, the want to be a fighter. Two, to continue a career in MMA. And three, it was like, I already had a fight. So how am I now not ready to fight again? So the logic element for me didn't really work out, and I should have just been more patient and cracked on. That's what you learn from. I was like, I won't do that again.
But that's the thing, you got back in. So I'll tell you about, when I first started, I got from nepotism where my dad's a comedian and I was doing these gigs. I kind of skipped open mic. I had to go back to open mic to relearn things. I'm doing these gigs and I'm like going out against nice audiences and I'm 16 years old. My act was terrible, dog shit, but I could sell it well. And like I was 16, so I had a bit of novelty. I did like 12 gigs and I'm murdering. Like I'm murdering hard that people like, quite big people come in, like, you seen this kid? This kid's good. I do a gig one day at Up the Creek, which is a famous comedy club in Greenwich. And it can be notoriously rough there. And I went on. And from the first second to the last second was just death. Like, just dying.
Really?
But I've not died before, and I'm 16 years old, and I've been killing everything. And when you don't know how to die, you tense up. You get very, very nervous. It's dying. It's like having a moment in a match or a comp where something's gone wrong. Don't rush. You need to regain composure. If you rush, things are about to get a lot worse. And that's what dying on stage is. If you go out there and mess up your opening joke, you've got to not rush to the next one. You just got to chill out, get them eventually. It's kind of similar, I say, from my very limited experience. Well, a lot of experience in dying, but not experience in fighting. And I walked off stage and I just burst into tears.
It's the game, man. It's the game.
I just sat upstairs and was like, I don't want to do it. And then, my dad about it, he's a comedian as well, and he went, all right, now you're going to find out if you're a comic. He went, you're either going to get back up there another night, or you're not. I was like, all right, I guess I got to do it again. And so I went and did it again and again and again, and then eventually you die again, and then after that you kind of learn. But every now and then in comedy you get a real, like when you bomb, you get a real, like, it can throw you because you go, I haven't done this in a while. Like you go, I haven't had it go really badly in a while. And there's a difference between not having a good gig and bombing, where the audience start to feel sorry for you. That's where you're sometimes, or the worst one's when it's gone badly. Someone comes up to you after and go, "Hey, I enjoyed it, man." That's the worst. Hey, man, I thought that was good. I thought, yeah, that's the worst one. When someone says, "Oh," or when you just have to leave the venue, you can't. I've left like jumpers and stuff at venues because I haven't even gone backstage to get them. I'm just going home.
Yeah, you just do it, yeah, straight away.
Oh, you just sat on a train home going, "What am I doing with my life?"
But all that being said, those words are so important. You're going to find out now what's going on, what's happening. Because,
Well, that's like what you had with that. You got yourself back in there.
And this is it, because
But that's a fighter mentality.
This is it. It's like, I don't know, it's become like a therapy session now, talking about like how I feel about fighting and stuff, but why not? It's like this imposter syndrome of, am I a fighter or not? Am I all these different things? And there's elements, it's like, is jiu-jitsu a fight? Are all these things fights? Is a stand-up show a fight? All these different things, and it is. If there's resistance, there's an element of, there's things that are going against me right now, and I'm resisting that to then pursue this goal, this dream, this ambition, whatever you want to call it. That feels like a fight.
I think they're both art forms. I really think martial arts is an art. There is an artistic element, and it's philosophical. I am putting my MMA is so philosophical. I am putting my philosophy of how to apply these things and how I've trained against your philosophy of how to apply these things and training, seeing whose philosophy is better. And stand-up was very philosophical as well. It's my ideas. Now, again, you can watch some clips of mine, and the last thing you will think is that it's philosophical. But it is. I find this stuff funny, like you were saying earlier about, I found this funny. I think this is funny. I really want to be the kind of comedian that I like to watch. You know, you probably want to be the kind of fighter you like to watch. That's both coming from the same place. It's just different avenues of exploring it. That's where it's both very, very, very similar, because you're driven by passion. But the imposter syndrome thing, everyone has that. Like, I know famous fucking sellout all over the world comedians who have a wobble every now and then, like have done amazingly. And some days they can have, oh my God, I am a god. And some days they're like, what am I doing? I'm not good at this. I shouldn't be doing this. And I think that's what you need in an artistic thing to drive you to be better. That's where imposter syndrome is quite important. It's an important thing to have, to go, because if you didn't have imposter syndrome, you wouldn't have any drive to better yourself. You go, I'm pretty good where I am. And that's, and then that's when you start posting things on Instagram about like tigers and like how that embodies your spirit instead of actually learning.
And this is it, when it comes to like the spiritual side of it, well, this is where it gets a bit questionable. Because like my spirit animal is always different things. All these different things. I'm a fighter because of all these different things I don't know. But ultimately, it's like I said, it's art, it's perception, it's all these different things. And ultimately, like, it's constructive to an extent. You're building yourself up, you're building the fitness, you're building a skill set, all these different things. But before we wrap up, your tour dates and things like that, where can people find you?
On Instagram, they're on my link tree there. So I don't know when this comes out, but yeah, they're all selling quite well, apart from you, Edinburgh. So yeah, like selling, yeah, it's going all right. That's like the next step I've taken to like, that feels like my, kind of like, I'm doing like a mini tour and stuff, and it's quite nerve-wracking.
It's mega.
It's cool, but it's not cool if no one turns. It's not as cool as a jiu-jitsu tournament when no one turns up and you get your medal and people go, how was that? Like, it don't matter. Yeah, I got the medal.
Default.
Yeah. When I got my bronze medal for just being there, I was like, yeah, man, this is great.
Hung up on the wall.
Yeah, it's still my Facebook picture. It was like, why is there two guys on the podium? It's like, don't matter.
That's it.
But yeah, I'm on Instagram at Elliot Steel and stuff. Man, this has been a pleasure. It's been nice to just come on and talk about the philosophy of martial arts and stuff, which is usually what I try to like bore my friends with who don't care about it. So like, because I'm just such a nerd who loves it all. Like, this has been really great for me, man. It's cool to come on a podcast that is dedicated to martial arts and not had any any insight about any of the technicalities of any moves or anything, but just like slag off ice baths.
That's the dream, man. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you for that, man.
Thank you, man.